There it is. Hello, Internet, and welcome to the bi-weekly Backdrop Design and Usability meeting. Today is Thursday, April 6th, and let's just start with a quick round of introductions. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager, currently living and broadcasting from San Ramon, California, where it's a gorgeous day. We're past the rain. And I'm hoping to talk about iconography at some point today, but we'll see how it goes. Let me throw it over to Robert.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. Pass it on to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada. And yeah, I don't really have anything specific related to this meeting I'm working on.
I'm Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota, where we still got a couple feet of snow. Anyways, Martin, you're up.
Martin Price in United Kingdom, Northeast England, and nothing in particular UX wise. I've been working on a few module ports today, so go to Robert.
No, Robert's done. We're through.
Oh, I'm done. Yeah.
That was everybody. Okay, everybody. Well, let's. We've already sent our weekly design and UX meeting, and we usually talk about a variety of design issues as well as any UX issues in the user experience issues in the issue queue. It doesn't sound like anybody came with any pressing UX issues. Luke, you did have a design related issue, right? Related to drop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any reason why we can't jump into that right away.
Okay. This isn't anything particularly new, but it's just always been sort of this itch that I've been looking to scratch. And I've actually, I guess this bubbled up to the surface because I've started messing around a little bit with Adobe Illustrator for the first time in years. I used it extensively in the 90s and then, but so still just latent skills. Anyway, we have our, I probably should brought up, but we've got our logo mascot, Drop the Lapdragon. And we've got three or four adorable little renderings of Drop. But I've, the things that come with it invite us to do things with Drop. I don't quite have the graphical, I don't have the Illustrator, not the program, but the, English word Illustrator skills to draw a creature from other angles. So I like to slice and dice things. So I've been kind of looking for ways to get different angles, and sort of as a backup plan, I'll start trying to illustrate it, but that's a long road for me to go up if someone could do it quicker. Martin, I'm gonna drag you into this a little bit because you mentioned the idea of you had sent out some feelers to some graphic artist communities to
I've got a contact locally who's a student in computer game modeling, and I asked him, but I've not heard anything from him. So and I don't want to bug him just because I'm asking him to do it for now. So I went on to Fiverr, which I certainly wouldn't use for myself, but I wouldn't use to sell myself, rather,
Mhm.
but so sometimes it can be useful for buying things, and just looked for a few looked at a few people who say they build 3D models, and looked at the sorts of things that they do, worked out if any of those were a good fit for what we're trying to do here. So I've approached one, so I passed him the images and asked if he can do it, and so he's going to come back to me next week. So we'll see. I'm not holding my breath, but he seemed to think it would be possible to get a 3D model that would then be ready, which we could open in a program called Blender, which is open source, and then be able to kind of rotate at its basic, be able to rotate it round, and get different images. But at its more advanced, it would enable, if we decided in the future that actually we want this dragon to fly, then it could be used for that by someone who knew how to do that. So that's the idea. It's not. It's a guy in India, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be very much. So we'll see what happens, and it's not very much money if it turns out to be a damp squid, but it might give us something that we can work with.
Yeah, no, that sounds like exactly the kind of things that I was looking into. I mean, as I've started doing Illustrator things, I have a license for Adobe Dimension, which is Adobe's 3D modeling program, which does really beautiful models. Like if I had an Adobe Dimension model of Drop, I could do all sorts of stuff with it. And I've looked up trying to find like dragons and things like that within it to see if they're available. I mean, one of the problems is when you search for dragons, you tend to find these big scary things, and so to find cuddly dragons, you end up with either stills from How to Train Your Dragon or Dragon Tales. Oh, look at that! Is that Toothless from
I don't know.
How to Train Your Dragon?
That's the no, it's the one we give out, or that has been selectively given out for backdrops to some backdrop folks. I stumbled across one. I think Jen found it as just the closest thing to Drop that she could find as a stuffed animal, and I happened to get my hands on one.
There we go. Send me a link to that. I'll buy them. Oh, good. I see Robert.
Sure.
Robert's got the thing in his hand I was about to ask about.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, I was thinking, if nothing else, Robert, I might ask you to like send me some photos of that from a couple of angles. And
You're muted. You're muted, Robert.
It is kind of flat from side to side, so it's like you're not going to get a good frontal view out of it.
oh, yeah.
Still nice, yeah. Okay.
So related, let me actually tag off of it. Along the line, just a question I've got at this point, collections from our press kit in various folders of the like logo and of Drop and a couple of things like that. If we spit out more of these things, should we have like a repo of it, or is there already a repo?
I don't think we have a Git repo for that yet. We could. On the other hand, I think we do just have a press kit page where you can download them. But if we thought people were going to modify them or add to them, doing a repo could work.
Yeah. I
Similar
want
to we
to.
have.
I don't know if anybody else does, but
Sure.
I have a history of this. Like the thing that I did in Illustrator, like back when I used to do Illustrator, is I had I used to promote a rock band. You guys have seen the website for that, and I had a character, a rat at the time, that I would pose in various context-specific situations that went over pretty well. So I can easily see doing that kind of thing with drop. I mean, I've done a little bit with like, you've seen I've thrown together graphics for things using the poses we have. It'd be fun to have more poses.
Sure. Okay, well, Martin, keep us up to date. We're anxious to see if you get something good.
We'll see.
Definitely, there have been calls over the years for more versions of drop. One particular one I know that we've talked about is like drop with a shovel that we could do kind of like under construction. Like that for the one discussion, I think at one point was the maintenance mode page for backdrop should have a little picture of drop with a shovel, or something, or a pickaxe, who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
But we've never got anybody to do those.
Yeah.
I would like to get a better list of things that we're waiting for, that we'd love for volunteers to do, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ongoing need for to somehow involve graphic artists with Backdrop, which would have, quite possibly the mutually beneficial thing of having work for them, if we can get them to do the artistic part of theming. I keep thinking there's a pool of artists out there who we could supply work to if we could somehow get those communications working. Yeah,
Sure.
Another pipeline kind of thing.
Okay. This isn't a too hard a turn, I think, but given that we don't have a lot of items on our agenda, one thing to talk about, what has prevented us, I think, from being good at managing like graphic artist volunteers in the past was a lack of an effective volunteer management system. We didn't have a good place where we were tracking, like, okay, who's volunteered for what, who has what skills. We have that in place now, but we haven't really started to use it. Robert, let me call on you. So to make that more functional, what I think we need to do, like what I'd like to do is get us, is I think we've kind of talked about just using tags, haven't we? So we have a couple of volunteer lists, and then we could. So for example, a graphic, somebody that's willing to do design work, rather than creating a whole bunch of groups in CiviCRM, we could create a tag or something, and then if I wanted to send out emails to people who wanted to do graphic art stuff, go ahead and interrupt me. Am I talking nonsense? How do we?
So I'm not sure what you mean by tags in CiviCRM, but
I could be forgetting the right term. So go ahead.
Groups are the mechanism to do that. You could create a group of,
yeah,
and you can create as many groups as you want.
Okay.
You can use any group as a mailing list, and you have to check a box that says this group is a mailing list. And you can make those groups public or private. Public means that people can opt in and out of the group if they want. Private just means only admins can put people into the group or not. And right. So you could, if you set up a group called graphic artists and add when someone says, I'm interested in this, add them to that group. And then anytime you want to put out a mailing to say, hey, could some graphic artist help with such and such? You create a CiviMail, you send it to that group.
Right.
And wait for the answers.
Yes, to all of those. I think the thing that you've sort of answered it already, that I was alluding to, is that I'd like more fine grained control. I mean, we don't want to have too many like check boxes for mailing lists on the form. And I want more fine grained control than that. But it sounds like still groups, it sounds like from what you're saying that groups might still be the tool.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't have to make, all the groups don't have to be a checkbox on the form. Some of them could be just people we add to privately, with their permission, right? So Luke says he's interested in graphic art stuff. And I say, well, let me put you on our list and we'll let you know when we have issues related to that. And then we could periodically create a mailing and we could target it at whichever, we could do a volunteer mailing targeted at whatever group it seems relevant. I'm going to start working on that. So let's start, so what I might do is just go out and say we're starting a new volunteer design and graphic art group who in our community has skills and is willing to be added to that. And it's not, what they're signing up for isn't like a weekly meeting or anything. They're just signing up to be on a list that we let them know when we have things that we need done. Or if we're doing a meeting that's specifically about that topic, then we could invite them, right? So if our marketing meeting, we might designate one of the marketing meetings where we want to talk about, specific graphic issues, and we could let, our list know if you're a volunteer interested in this stuff, this would be a great meeting to come to because we need your input.
Oh yeah. so anxious to have that kind of an audience.
Yeah.
For at least two obvious things, right? For the ongoing need to create material for advertising, for campaigns of various sorts, and also just the product. I mean, we were reminded recently that the people perceive Backdrop as not being amenable to looking attractive out of the box in the way that say WordPress is perceived to be. So harkening back to ready to wear, I think that's still kind of a thing. It doesn't have to be hundreds. 5 good themes that people could click between that would be pretty indifferent would be like a fantastic thing.
Sure.
Seems like an opportunity.
So I just opened up, we have a volunteer group, and you probably looked at this, Robert, and it's got like 80 people, but it looks to me like half of them are spam accounts, is my guess, but I don't necessarily want to assume that. Would it be, could we do like a mailing saying an email out, basically asking people to confirm that they're in, that they volunteer? Would that make sense? Or would we just, ignore them, and will they kind of get filtered out over time through bounces and stuff? Do you know if Civi will like track bounces, and if their spam accounts just start to sort of flag them as not useful?
Yeah, it does track bounces. And I think the default threshold is 5 bounces, then it puts their email on hold. So they're still in the group,
Okay.
but CiviMail won't send emails to anyone whose email is on hold.
Okay, well, I don't want to require everybody opt back in, so it might be better if we just ignore them and just see how things pan out over time. If we don't get any response or we're getting bounces, we could weed them out later. Some of them may already, based on our Backdrop Live email, we might have some data already about whether they're real addresses or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, there's kind of an open question on the site. When we, so there's a spam check page, and usually I check it every day. I haven't for a few days. I was just looking at it now. We get about 5 to 10 spam account creations. And if they are obviously spam, I block them. And then we've got a auto user account deletion that if no one complains about being blocked after 2 weeks, then their user account gets deleted. But it leaves behind a Civi CRM record in whatever Civi CRM settings are in there. And so this is kind of an infrastructure question, but the question is, when we delete a user account, should we also delete the Civi CRM contact at the same time? And then that would help take care of the proliferation of those spam contact records in Civi CRM and whatever groups they're sending.
Yeah, I don't know I mean,
And that's broader than this question
right.
outside of this meeting, but it's relevant to what you just asked.
Well, I'm noticing sort of in the volunteer group, I found one that looks like a spam account. When I click on it, it's signed up for no bulk emails. And I'm like, well, it doesn't do us any good to have somebody in our volunteer group if we can't email them. So I would be inclined to just remove them from the group, but I don't know if I should just remove them from the group or, again, this looks like a spam account, or if we should delete it. And if we delete it, should we be checking Drupal, Drupal.org or backdrop.org and see if there's an account there? I don't know.
Yes, and these all sort of come down to policy questions.
Yeah.
Since if we were doing, for example, postal mailings or SMS contacts, then we could reach people even though they have opted out of emails. But if the only tool we're using is emails, then if someone opts out of all emails, then take them out of the group because we're never going to reach them.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm looking at a user member, and there is so the reason I came up with tags is I think when I sent out that last newsletter, I found that you could send a mailing to just a tag, and there are tags on members' accounts. The default, right now we just have default tags, which are company, government entity, major donor, nonprofit, and volunteer.
Okay.
But I wonder if maybe we need to think a little bit about how we want to use groups versus tags to organize people. Like, so maybe we have the volunteer group, but then within that we just apply tags to certain specialties. I don't know. I might just need to experiment with that. It sounds like you haven't used that before.
Yeah, I have not used tags, only used groups.
And when I Googled, I found some documentation that was talking about like how to use tags to send mailers and stuff. So I think that is one way that they recommend using them. Anyways. Well, this all ties back to design, because I think design is an area where we'll really be able to make use of this, right? We're not good at communicating with those people we've had people over the years that say, hey, I could help you with, let me know, but then we don't track that. And so let's start doing that. Anything else? We don't actually have to just kill time, I guess, if we don't have anything to talk about. If Jen or Greg were here, we would probably just go into the issue queue and find some usability issues that we could talk about. But I'm not inclined to do that if nobody here has any, just because I'm so out of date with what's going on in the issue queue. Robert, are you aware of any issues that's usability related issues that are hung up that we could?
Oh, nothing comes to mind.
Okay.
Best I've mostly just been sort of watching the issue queue flow by. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's just wrap this meeting up and we'll have a half hour. I can hang up and chat with folks in between before the dev meeting.
Would this be the correct place to discuss like things to make it easier to make recipes, or would that be more of a design or a development thing?
I think it would be, it could go either. So I actually thought about bringing that up, Joseph, but I felt like I would be cornering you again. And I didn't want to do that, but if you brought it up, it
Okay,
wouldn't hurt
well-
for us to talk a bit about it, unless you're looking for like Nate's advice on core, how to implement it in core or something, then this is not a good place. But for like
No,
the use
no, I was-
UX perspective, yeah. Go
I
ahead.
was just curious, like what people would want from a tool that was doing that.
Right.
I've started working on it since the last time we talked but I haven't really gotten that far.
Okay. Well, why don't, do you want to describe what we talked about last time? And then we can see if anybody else here has anything to add to that.
Sure. So essentially what we were discussing is basically a module that provides a UI to create and manage the recipes. And we didn't really have like a super concrete idea, but essentially Tim had this idea of basically being able to click a start button and then go build whatever it is you want on your website. And then the module would keep track of what changed on the website. And then when you were done, you could click save and it would take all of the steps, like created these config files, modified these config files, enabled these modules, and turn it into the dependency list and the module and the config folder for a recipe.
Yep.
I
So-
love that idea.
So I've been working on that, although I don't really have much to show at the moment.
Okay.
I have lots of DPM statements.
Joseph, could I throw an architecture question at you that I think you probably know offhand, which has to do with the structure of the config folder.
Okay.
Would it be possible to have config files live inside of subfolders inside the config folder?
I don't know. I think like in your module or in the site as a whole.
I'm thinking this. When I've gone and like sort of mucked around with config things, I'm always sort of floored by the choice of either like a single config file, which is almost always useless, or all the config files, which is almost always overwhelming. And I wonder if there's some medium in there. I mean, I would love to have folderizing, for example,
like in the exports.
yeah, for example, or even just just somewhere, just
Sure.
as have it exist as a tagged set.
I think I think the config system as it currently exists doesn't support having different directories, but I think we can, like you're talking about like selecting a content type and then you need the primary config file for that content type, and you need all the fields and field instances
Yeah,
and taxonomy, vocabularies, and text formats and image styles. And
which is the kind of thing that like recipes tend to be, right? They tend to be,
Right.
Related sets of config files. And in the way that like the modules and themes folders work, unless I'm wrong about that, right? Like you can arbitrarily throw folders into the modules folder,
right.
and Backdrop doesn't care. It just finds everything that's under there, right?
Right. Yeah. So it does a recursive search for modules. I believe that we chose not to do a recursive search on config because it's a performance
Mhm.
because we're looking these up and reading and writing them on every single page load. So we decided to just have a single directory to make it faster.
Hmm.
Because if you're recursively searching, then you can easily
Yeah,
end up with situations that are just painfully slow.
or even just
But
like
I
that I get. I mean, I imagine it would need to be cached. It would need to not have a performance
Right. But I think we could have like a key in the config file. Hang on. Let me share my screen real quick.
I'm like Joseph, pretty sure you couldn't do that now. It's not supported, but whether you could make it do that, it would be interesting. Okay, we're seeing your screen.
Yeah, I'm pulling something up on the other screen.
Okay.
What's an example? Admin bar. So there are these, which are not actually part of your config, but are used by the config system to manage the files. And so we have like an issue in core to add another one of these that's which module created this. But we could add like a group. I don't know, metadata property and use that for what you're thinking. I think the idea with what I'm doing is that you won't have to do that because you can just make it through the UI and click
Right.
export and it'll just know which things are required.
Sounds good.
Sure. So
Yeah,
what,
Um,
yeah, I mean, what I described, Joseph, was really a minimal thing that would be useful to me, which is what you described, right? And it's really, you just sort of basically take a snapshot of your config directory. You can add a bunch of, configure a new feature like it wouldn't be like this, but you would configure a new feature and then you would say, okay, now bundle all the config files that have been changed. So basically run a diff. And one of the things after we, I was imagining just new config files
Mhm.
In our discussion, and that would be useful. But it,
Right.
of course, occurred to me that, it might edit an existing config file, and it would be helpful to at least know that, although I don't know that we have a way to manage that yet. And I wouldn't call that an MVP, like the ability to
Right.
automatically deal with changed config files is an extra layer of complexity that would be nice, but not required.
Right. I've basically started building this page,
Okay.
but with an extra button that's like
Okay.
enable build mode. And you just click it and then go do something else on the site and come back. And those changes will be reflected in this form for you.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and I feel like, so create and delete config files and enable and disable modules are really easy to track.
Right.
Editing like one key in an existing config file is a lot harder because you have to like diff these big arrays. But
yeah.
Right.
create and delete like a list of config files would be really easy.
Mhm.
And I think as long as we didn't go too crazy with it, adding the dependency checking, like I add article and it adds my fields and my
Right.
module dependencies, that would probably not be that hard as long as, because it didn't detect the text format
Okay.
that the body's using. So I don't know. I don't know how we
Right.
would do that.
Well,
Because you'd have to like get all the supported text formats because you can change them on the fly.
good point.
So I don't know.
I don't know. I think any of my recipes so far have just used the existing default query.
Mhm.
And you know, haven't been dependent on a particular text format, but I can definitely envision one that would. And
Right.
if it were a new text format, you would just include that. But this is where recipes start to get tricky, is that, you know, maybe, although I guess this is not something you can anticipate, is what if there might be an equivalent text format that would have worked already, but there's no way we're going to know that. So we just,
Right. That would be
yeah.
like scanning what CK editor plugins you have enabled on your text formats, and
Yeah,
I
and then
don't
trying to
know
decide if
when
they're
that-
compatible, right?
Yeah.
No. So, okay, well, again, you're asking questions that are definitely very interesting questions, but they are, my biggest fear about them is that we you know we move beyond the MVP and then it
Mhm.
gets bogged down. Like, but I like your so I hadn't thought about it the way you're thinking about it, but the way you're thinking about it makes sense. This
Mhm.
idea, sort of go into build mode. I like that.
Right.
Click build mode, and then just sort of have it track. And again, like I was envisioning that it wouldn't track while you were doing it. It would, you know, when you were done, it would just do sort of a diff and see what you changed. But I can see that the if it's tracking it as you do it, again, that sort of boggles my mind a bit. But if you're able to do that, that might be better and provide more options down the road in
Right.
terms of getting into other things.
Mhm.
So, you know, and like I absolutely wouldn't even consider content right now, but you know, if your build mode were able to track that and at least alert the user, even if it wasn't able to bundle that, but if it was able to alert the user of content changes, that might be helpful.
I think there was what was it? There was a module that let you add content to your features in Drupal 7.
Mhm. Well, again, that would be great down the
Do any of you
road.
remember what that was called?
No, I don't. I didn't know that existed.
Oh,
I don't think.
okay. At Hook 42, we used features all the time, and we would do
You
crazy
know,
stuff with it.
I think I was aware that it existed, and I might have even used it on one or two occasions, but not enough to know what it was called.
Okay. I'll have to go look through some of my old code
Yeah.
bases and find it.
I mean, I definitely like, again, for that to be down the road, but let's not get bogged up in that. Let's not think too far ahead and then get stuck. Get me even the basic version of this, and I'll, you know, what my MVP is really not something that would be that hard to do just on my own, just using Git. But if you gave it to me in a package, I think I'd be more likely to use it. It was after our discussion that I did go out and create. It sort of reminded me how easy it is to do some of this, and I went out and created at least one new recipe.
I'm just going to show one more thing. The where is it? This page. I would like this page, which is the manage features page,
Mm-hmm.
to look like this page.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'd like, I don't really, this is probably way in the future, but I'd like it to be able to just like show you what's available, and you just click the button, and it's
Yep.
just like, you want events. Here's
Yeah.
this event feature, you click
Mhm.
install, and you have an event system.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This would be really powerful. And this is a little bit what Jen started to work on, not necessarily this interface, but
Mhm.
this idea, right, of being able to view just recipes and install them. I'm confused about what's possible right now. I would love to be able to put screenshots into the READMEs for particularly for my recipes, but also for some of my modules. And I'm almost confused about whether that's already possible, and I don't know how to do it. Or
Screenshots in the readmes. You can.
Yeah.
It's definitely possible. I know a few people who've done that, and you generally have to include an images folder and then added in the markup.
Will they show up on the backdrop.org project page then, or just in the README?
They'll show up in GitHub.
Right.
I think
I'd like for them to show up on the project page, but I don't know if that might be the part that we can't do. I think I have seen them in README files in GitHub, but what I wanted to, like, can we get that to translate to the project page?
yeah, I think I don't know about the project page. Like we would have to
No, I don't.
Yeah.
handle that.
There's one that I looked at today. Oh no, it's not that one.
But you can, if you do this and you
Yeah.
have the file in your repo, it will show up on the GitHub project page
Okay.
like this.
I mean,
Well, even that might be
could hack-
better. I could put a note in my README saying, for images, go to the GitHub repo and read this. What were you going to say something, Robert?
yeah, I mean, it could be done in sort of a hacky thing way by, we pull in the markdown text from the README file, and you just do a look for that pattern of a link, of a markdown link that ends in a image format and starts with a slash, and then say, okay, add in the appropriate GitHub prefix to pull that image. But that sounds fragile.
Sure.
But it seems doable. I mean, much harder would be to actually, or I think more fraught at least would be to try to pull the images into b.org to provide.
We could port this module and just pull the markdown directly from the README and display it.
Well, across the board, like the ability to add some images to the project pages, on Drupal.org, sometimes there are screenshots of like what a module does. And I find that really helpful. And to my knowledge, we don't have the ability to do that. And that's always kind of frustrated me a bit.
Mm.
Although I've never been sure if we don't have the ability to do it or if I just don't know how to do it.
Well, Joseph, that module is on Backdrop.
Okay.
And I think it's even installed on b.org.
Oh, even better.
But getting the right path for the image was what I was talking about.
Okay. If they have
the B one, Kevin Swanson's just mentioned on watching on YouTube, and he's just mentioned in Zulip that the B one, so it does come through onto the project page on Backdrop CMS.
Well, it does.
But what it has in the README is the full URL of the image. Let me just put it in chat. So
what's the module name?
B. You got it. Should be B.
So that's the URL of the.
Actually,
that's the markup of the image. It's like it's a HTML.
I apparently cannot see the. Oh,
right. B is a project, but it's not in the project page, is it? It's not.
No, it's not in the project page. You have to type in like project B, and I was trying to find information. I was trying to see if we could, if people could easily find out about B, and they can't. So we need to think about that. But that's where.
Because it's not a module.
No, it's not. But I think we probably need to make it clear clearer, probably on the page that there is a command line tool.
Yeah,
Interesting.
So what you're saying is that B does this by linking offsite, so the image is stored elsewhere. It's stored.
Right. It's directly
It's stored
Yeah.
in the repo, but it's this.
Oh,
It's that particular.
mhm.
you're directly accessing the image from the repo.
yeah.
Interesting. So
I might start doing that. Well, this is good to know that B is an example that I could look at and try experiment with. I would love to get some screenshots into some of my modules. I think it would make them so much more interesting. And you triggered this. What's your name, Joseph? By that interface you showed us, right? Those images actually really kind of help in that WordPress plugin page. They just make it more interesting, right?
right, yeah, having like a little icon or a little. Some of them are. Most of them are icons, but I think some of them have.
And most of them aren't that useful as like screenshot would be, but it's still, even that makes it easier. We're not seeing any images in those readmes. Interesting. Oh, they have screenshot. They have a screenshot tab.
Description, installation.
See, this is why WordPress is better than background.
Mhm.
And it's got the metadata, and it's got ratings, and it's got the
Right.
list of contributors.
Damn straight.
Yeah,
We should have this for modules.
Yes, we should. I like it. Well, I think that is a design UX meeting, but we should wrap up our meeting. Let's end this meeting now, but talk about this again in the future. Okay. I'm going to, everybody goodbye. I'm going to turn off the recording.
Bye.